Hello?
Miss Lestico, guess what time it is?
What time?
It's time for math!
Yay!
Hey, first grade, welcome to math.
That's right. We have another super fun day of using those non-standard forms of measurement.
That is so right, Miss Lestico. I have really enjoyed measuring all of these objects with anything I want.
Well, what's our target today, Miss Lime?
It says I can use non-standard measurement to measure objects.
Oh, wow. Today we're going to really look at those rules that we're using when we're making sure that our non-standard forms of measurement are correct and will give us an accurate measurement.
That's right. And before we get started, we have a super cool video to watch.
Hello, first graders. Today's lesson is on non-standard units of measure. So we know that a ruler has standard units of measure, like inches and centimeters. Non-standard units of measure would be things like paper clips, Unifix cubes, chain links, or even craft sticks. We'll be using paper clips today to measure my shoe. Now, let's go take this over to the table. When using non-standard units of measure, everything needs to be the same size. One, two, they also need to be done end to end. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This shoe is 10 non-standard units long.
That was an interesting video, Miss Lestico. I noticed that as she was measuring, I was paying attention to how she was doing it, and there were a couple different rules that she was following.
That's right. And we have kind of mentioned these rules before and watched a few videos about the things that you need to pay attention to when you're measuring in order to get an accurate measurement.
Yeah, the first thing that I noticed though right away, Miss Lestico, is we keep using these words, standard and non-standard.
That's right.
I'm having trouble keeping that straight.
She gave us a few examples of non-standard measurement, and I remember that can be anything around us that you can use in order to show the length or the height of something.
That's right. And we keep hearing the examples of like using paper clips or cubes, but I know that non-standard means anything. I could measure using my feet, using markers, using pencils, using magnets, anything. And we're going to go through the rules to make sure our non-standard units are actually able to be measured with.
That's right. So non-standard would just be any object that we can use to measure something. Well, then what would standard be, Miss Lime?
Well, I think that would be like what would you normally use? Like it's a standard. It's the same everywhere you go. So I think that would be like using a ruler that would have inches or centimeters. If I show an inch in Miss Lestico's classroom, it's going to be the same across the world in a classroom in England, right? But if I pull out a paper clip and then I go to a different classroom, their paper clips might be a different size.
That's right. So our rulers are usually what we use to measure with standard measurement. Well, I know that there's a few rules that we really have to pay attention to make sure that we're measuring correctly. The first one that I know she pointed out with her paper clips is it all has to be the same size.
That's right. So Miss Lestico is going to add our rule to the board. If I wanted to measure with these magnets, could I use this set? No, they're not all the same size. These two look like they're the same size, and this is similar, but it's not really the same size. It's a little bit smaller. This one is way smaller. I can't measure with these because I wouldn't get an accurate number, okay?
So I'm going to show a paper clip that is this size, and then a paper clip that's the same size would be correct for measuring. But if I were to use like a little paper clip and a big paper clip to measure, that would not be correct. That would not work.
Okay, well, what would be another rule?
Well, another rule that I remember is when we start measuring, we have to start at the beginning of the object.
That's right. You always have to measure from end to end. I don't want to start measuring in the middle of an object because then I'm not really going to know how long or tall something is. And I don't want to stop measuring before I've gotten to the end. And I don't want to go past the end. It really has to be from end to end.
That's right. So I know if I am measuring a line, I have to start at this beginning area right here. I couldn't put my paper clips or my popsicle sticks or anything else in the middle because that wouldn't measure the whole line.
And you always have to go all the way to the very end of it, Miss Lestico.
That's right. Well then I know one more of our rules was that when we are measuring across, we have to make sure that everything is touching. There should be no gaps. There should be no overlaps.
That's right. So if I was measuring, I have all these magnets right here. Uh-oh, that's not going to tell me an accurate way to measure because I have gaps in there. I know that when I measure, it needs to be in a straight line with no gaps. So I can see there's a gap right here because there's spaces in between. They need to push together to be touching. So now there are no gaps. They're exactly together. And that way I can know exactly how many it takes. So this is what no gaps would look like. Now, we also need to make sure there's no overlapping. That would mean these objects aren't like sitting on top of each other or underneath each other. I can see there's no gaps, but it really needs to be just touching on one end, not overlapping each other at all.
Well, then our final rule that we should look at, Miss Lime, is making sure that when we line up our objects, they go across in a straight line. They don't go up really high and then back down really far, but it's a straight line.
That's right. If I had all these magnets and I was going to measure, there's no gaps, no overlaps, but look, that is not how I would measure. That's not a straight line. I need to make sure it stays in a straight line. Because if I start going zigzagging, it's going to take up way more than what it really should be. So these objects always need to be in a straight line.
Well, Miss Lime, should we use some of these rules to measure?
I think we should. Let's start with this clock, Miss Lesko. How would I measure how tall that is?
Oh, okay. Well, I know our first rule is that all the objects we use are the same size. So when I go to pick my magnets, I'm not going to pick some of these random ones. They're different shapes. I'm going to make sure that they are all the same size. Well, then looking at my second rule, it tells me to start at the beginning and then go to the end. So I'm going to put my hand across the beginning of it to make sure that I'm starting at the top. And then I'm going to line up all of my magnets all the way to the end. And I am noticing I'm using my rule of making sure that all of my objects are touching and they're going down in a straight line so that I can measure this timer.
Great job, Miss Lestico. So how tall is the timer?
Well, it looks like it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 magnets tall.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can measure how long this eraser is. Now, I'm going to put it all back to the beginning, and I remember I need to start with the same objects. Okay, so I know these are all the same size, and these are all different sizes, and that's definitely not going to be enough to measure. So I'm going to use these magnets. Okay, I need to start at the beginning of my eraser and go to the end. So here is my first magnet, and it is lined up exactly with the end. Now, I'm going to make sure my objects are touching, but they're not overlapping. They're just touching. There's no gaps, and they're going in a straight line, right? I don't want to zigzag down and then zigzag back up, because is that really how long it is? No. But if they're in a straight line, I can see that this magnet, or this eraser, is 4 magnets long. It's your turn.
On Seesaw, you are going to have some objects to measure. Now, while you're doing it, I want you to think about the rules that we learned today for how you measure correctly. And then I want you to record your voice telling me one rule that you know that you used and exactly what it was.
Good luck measuring. You're going to have so much fun. And make sure when you're done, you click that green check mark.
Good luck.